Welcome to this time lapse of a still life painting. I've called it the tea set. I'm working here on the anthracite pastel matte color. The size of this is 30 centimeters by 43 centimeters, and the reference photo is from Jill Wellington. So I started with a bit of pan pastels. If you've never used pan pastels before, it's kind of like soft pastels pressed down into a pan, basically. And then you use soft tools, spelled S-O-F-F-T, to layer on the pastel. And I go in with that as well as using pastel sticks on top of that. It's really important to me that I capture that sunlight. I absolutely love painting light. So as you can see, I'm putting in the rays lastly. First go in, make sure you've got the window pane in the window and the wall, and then the sun rays will be the last thing that goes onto the paper. Working back to front, so hence me starting with the window and the wall, that would be the back of the painting, I guess you could call it. And then I'll gradually work my way towards the foreground. So these flowers, because they're in the background, it wasn't really important that they had a lot of detail. What was important though is I didn't want them to look flat. So I do that by incorporating different tonal values of a color. So for example, I've chosen red. The reference photo is red, and I decided to keep them at red. And what I will do is I'll lay in dark reds and work my way up to lighter reds. So as I mentioned, I'm working back to front. So everything is sitting on this tray. So that's why I decided before I start the work that is actually on the tray, so the tea set and the cupcake, I started with the tray using a lot of pastel pencils as well as my pastel sticks. I use a range of Carbethello's, Unison, Mount Vision, Terry Ludwig, what else? Blue Earth pastels, Sennelier. Basically, as you're going to hear, I use a vast range of pastels. I have been collecting them for a few years, so just to get all the colors that I'm wanting. I find as well as tonal value, I enjoy color, so I enjoy working with a really big palette. I know it can be a bit intimidating for some, but for me, that's how I work. I crack out all the colors. This cupcake was giving me a lot of trouble. As you can see, I started out with like a pinky, and then I thought let's make it more vanilla-y, but every time I stepped back from the work, it was too pronounced. Your eyes would just go straight to that cupcake, and I definitely did not want that. So you'll see later on I actually darkened it way down and I made it a chocolate cupcake. In the reference photo, it's like a powder blue sort of color with a pink casing, and I just wasn't feeling that vibe, so I decided to change it. Now, silver is highly reflective. One of the features that drew me to the still life, besides the light coming in through the window and the warm afternoon glow, was all the reflections you could see in the silverware. And because she had placed everything on a tray that had a lot of, it's got a lot of roses and well, basically, yeah, it's got roses on there, so a lot of detail. All of that would be reflected up into the silverware. So that is one of the reasons why I chose it. So then you've got a lot going on in the silverware, which I'm slowly building up. Takes a lot of observation. I'm really looking at what is being reflected. I'm really studying that reference photograph. I'm working dark to light. That is how I work in pastel, and just slowly building that up, as I mentioned. Yeah, I find when I get the darks in first and then I work to midtones, and then I'll play around and put in some light tones, and then it helps me to see, oh, this needs to be darker, and I just keep building up my layers like that: dark, midtone, light, dark, midtone, light, until I get it to the level of realism that I'm happy with. I'm putting down a piece of paper there. You can see just a plain piece of copier paper to protect my work that I've already done. I don't want to smudge anything that I've already laid down. And as you can see, I'm just not happy with this cupcake at all. That will change towards the end. It's really important, I find, that you create a focal point, I guess, in the painting. Now, as I mentioned, there's a lot going on in here, but I don't want people's eyes to be drawn to the cupcake. The cupcake is actually quite irrelevant. I want people to be drawn to the light of the window, then bounce into the light on the flowers and the tea set. That is what the focal point is, really. I was even deciding whether to take that cupcake out or not. But in the end, I decided to leave it in there just to add, a little bit more interest, I suppose. But it gave me a lot of hassle. But yes, so definitely don't want, as you can see, I'm darkening it down here. So be aware of when you're looking at your painting, where's the first place your eye is drawn to? And is that intentional? Is that what you want? And if not, a good way to take the viewer's eye away is to darken that element of the painting down. Like what I've done here. I decided, okay, you're too shiny, you're too in the spotlight. I'm going to make you chocolate. And so that is exactly what I did. And I'm much happier with the finished piece, much happier. That was a really good decision. I'm working the same process as I did for the sugar jar as well as the milk jug. So as you can see, I laid in the brightest brights I could see first, and then I'm going in with the darkest darks. Sometimes I'll do that. If there's a lot of white or something's really bright on an object, I will get those down rather than waiting till the very end. So in the silver, besides all the reflected colors that you can see in there, you've got the red and pink of the roses, you've got the yellows from the lights that were around. I used a lot of grays to build up the actual color of the silver. I used a mixture of warm tone grays and cool tone grays. So gray that looks a little bit more on the yellowish side, or maybe slightly pinky side, mixed in with cooler grays which have more of a slight bluiness to them. And I'm just building that up. I did use a bit of white. Art Spectrum do a brilliant little set of their extra soft pastels called Highlights, and there it's got 10 colors in. They're basically all tints, so they all look white, but they're all tinted with like either orange, green, lilac, coral, and I use those in the brightest part of the painting, and I use those towards the end of the painting just to really make everything sing. Now if everything was one tonal value, as in if I didn't have any darks in there or any mid-tones, it would look very flat when you come in and you put your brightest lights on. So it was really, really important to make those darks really dark. Because you think of silver, you don't really think of dark. But if you don't get that dark in, your highlights are not going to pop and your work's going to look a little bit flat. So the tray is sitting on this cushion thingy, majiggy, cushion table. I'm sure it's got a proper name. Don't know what it is. And again, I thought, shall I just make this all red? And then I thought, no, that looks a bit funny. So I decided to sort of mimic the pattern that I was seeing. I say sort of because I did not get it in line for line. I just kind of made up my own sort of design vibe going on there. And again, I'm happy with the end result. There, as I said, there is a lot of detail in this piece, so I'm just taking little bite sizes, working section by section. Again, I'm just putting down paper so I don't mess up my work, and also sometimes to see, because sometimes my eye-hand coordination isn't fantastic. So as you can see, to get the proper shapes of the cup in, I sometimes will hold the reference photo right up next to it so I can see better. And here you can see I'm actually turned my whole work to its side so that I can just get a better view basically and see where am I going wrong, because there was something with the cup. Ellipses are notoriously tricky, or for me anyway, so just by getting that reference as close as possible, it means my eyes don't have so far to travel. They're traveling very, a very short distance, and I just find that easier for me to get in the shapes that I'm needing. So I used very little white in this. It's built up with a lot of creams and again grays, a mixture of yellow tone grays and sort of red tone grays. Didn't use a lot of white in that white teacup at all. This is coming to the point now where I'm just adding in the little finishing touches, going around the work, lightening what needs to be lightened, darkening what needs to be darkened. If you'd like to see this in real time, please head over to my Patreon. I'll leave a description in the link below. Cheers for now.